Hi everyone, this is Ravi. Welcome back to Katalon's Automation Beginners Tutorial. Till now, I published around 16 YouTube videos on Katalon Studio automation concepts. So this is our lesson 17 where I'm going to teach you how can we use test listeners in Katalon Studio, and also what is the use of test listeners in Katalon Studio. And also I'm going to cover different types of test annotations that we will be using as part of test listeners in Katalon Studio. Please do subscribe to the channel, click on bell icon. You'll receive notifications whenever I publish more videos. Thank you. Okay, so test listeners. So if you remember the concept of test ng, so when you are actually automating your test cases by using Selenium, you will be using TestNG framework, right? In the TestNG framework, we have different types of annotations, basically to specify the test case priority, and then to specify it is a test case function, right? And then before test, after test. So in the same way, Katalon also have an inbuilt functionality called test listeners. Okay, you can use these test listeners in defining different methods like before test case, after test case, before test suite, and then after test suite. Okay, all these options are readily available in Katalon Studio. So let's jump onto the system and see how can we use these test listeners in Katalon Studio while automating your test cases.
Okay, so this is my Katalon Studio. Okay, so let's create one test case quickly. Okay, let's create a test case. Click on new and then create new test case. So in my previous sessions already I explained you all these concepts, basically how can you create a test case and how can you add objects, right? All these concepts in my previous lessons. Okay, so now test listener, I'm going to name it as test listener, the test case title, and let's quickly record one test case. Okay, let's record the test case. How? Record web. Okay, and then I want to provide the URL that you would like to record. Okay, this is my URL. Okay, which is a test website. Okay, and then click on what browser do you want to select. I want to select Chrome browser. Okay, I selected Chrome browser and then click on record. So as soon as you click on record, it's going to open the website that is required. Okay, so here enter the name, and this is password, and click login, and here I'm going to register myself. Okay, I'm just registering, I'm signing up. Okay, select India and then provide your address, street address, and then provide your email ID, and then provide mobile number. Okay, and then click on save. Okay, it's a saved, right? And then close the browser. So if you expand this, right, whatever the actions that we are performing, it is recording. Okay, let's close the browser. Done. Now let's save the script. Okay, it is asking, do you want to save in the same object repository? So I want to create a new repository. Okay, test listener. Okay, so all these concepts I already explained you guys. Okay, click on OK. Done. So now our test case is created and our new repository is created. Okay, what is our test case? Test listener. Okay, let's run this test case one more time and see if it works correctly. Okay, how? Click on run and then select your Chrome browser. Okay, So now if you see here, it started running, and then you can also observe your log viewer, okay, to see the steps. Yeah, it's opening the browser. Okay, it's starting the Chrome driver. Yeah, it started Chrome driver, and then okay, I think yeah we have some. Okay, let's okay, it's open the browser, and then it should select the country, enter the address, right? Yeah, yeah, saved the, that's it. So it worked perfectly all right. Okay, so I think it opened one more browser, that is because of test listener which I created earlier. Let me remove that test listener. Okay, okay, so that's done. So it's working for us. Okay, so now what is test listener? So I explained you in my previous session, right, about different test listeners that are available. If you go to Katalon, okay, you simply just say test listener Katalon, okay, and then you're gonna redirect to the documentation that is available in for the Katalon. Okay, as I told you, Katalon has a different sets of documentation, so you have lot of documentation corresponding to Katalon. Okay, so you can easily find the entire documentation. If you see here, this is documentation of the Katalon. Okay, so if you see what is test listeners, okay, as I explained you, there are different types of test listeners. Okay, one is, if you see here, generate sample before test case method. That means we are creating before test method, as I explained you in my previous session, before test case method to create a sample test listener executed before every test case starts. What about after test case? This after test case method to create a sample test listener executed after every test case ends, right? In the same way, before test suite, okay, before test suite, create a sample test listener executed before every test suite starts. Okay, in the same way, after test suites, right, this we will be creating test listener executed after every test suite is ends. Okay, so that's the reason we will be creating. Now let's create our own test listeners, and then let's use those test listeners for this test case, the new test case whatever we created. Okay, how to create test listeners? So I explained you what are all the modules available in the Katalon, right? So under Katalon left side pane, you can see test cases, object repository, test suites, data files, all these things I already explained you. And here under this, there is this folder called test listener. So right click on this folder and then click on new and then new test listener. So let's name this as test listener registration. Okay, just name this as that way. Okay, and what kind of test listener do you want to generate? So let's say I want to generate sample before test case method, after test case method, before test suite method, and after test suite method. Basically it's going to generate a sample methods. Okay, you need to select all those and click on OK. So as soon as you click on OK, it generates your sample test listener file. Okay, sample test listener class file. Okay, if you see here, you have a before method at the rate before test case. That is what the annotation that you need to use. So as I explained you earlier, whenever you are using TestNG framework by using Selenium, right? So you use almost similar kind of annotations at the rate test case, at the rate before method, at the rate before after methods, right? So in the same way here, at the rate after test case, at the rate before test suite, at the rate after test suite. Okay, so now let's use some of the listeners. Okay, how? Let's see. I want to use before test case listener. Okay, I want to basically I want to comment out the code that is present here. Okay, control forward slash comments out all the code, entire code. Okay, I want to write a new piece of code. Okay, let me do one thing. Let's copy this again. I want to copy this and paste it here. Okay, the previous one I want to comment out. Okay, so here instead of printing test case id and test case variables, see the sample test case that is available here, sample method which prints test case id and variable. I don't want to do that. What I want to do, so if you go here in my test case, opening browser, navigating to URL, right? And let me insert one more keyword here, web UI keyword. After navigating to URL, I want to maximize the window. Okay, maximize the window. I want to maximize the window, save it. Okay, let's keep like this. Now all these three steps, right? All these three steps are actually mandatory for me to execute. Opening a browser and then navigating to the URL and then maximizing the window is very common in every test case. So whenever I execute test case, I need to go to the URL. I need to open the browser, right? So these are my steps that I need to perform for every test case. So now I want to define those steps in before test case method, right? So that I want to go back here and go to script mode. I explained you about manual and script modes in my previous sessions. Okay, at the bottom you have all these things. Okay, go to script mode, and here I want to copy opening a browser, navigate to URL, and then maximize. These things I want to copy and paste here, where I want to perform these steps before any test case execute, right? Before test case execute. So that's the reason I'm defining this. And here I want to remove this because it's a function that does not require any return, right? I need not to specify any variable. So that is my before method. Okay, let's remove from here to make it simple. Okay, so this is my before method. And what about, let's, okay, so this is my before method. What is after method? Okay, after test case method. So let's copy this again, after test case method as it is, copy, paste it here. Okay, I want to comment out, sorry, I want to comment out the previous one. Okay, let's comment out all this. Okay, I commented out this. Now after test case method again, what I want to use, see, whenever I execute any test case, right, my common step is to close the browser. So I'm closing the browser, correct? So I want to create a close browser, copy this, go to script mode, copy this step. I want to define close browser as after test case method, right? So that means any test case when I execute, the close browser should happen. And any test case when I execute, before I start the test case execution, open browser, navigate to URL, maximize window should happen. Okay, these two are before test case and after test case methods. I defined them. Done, right? So let's, okay, let me comment out all other methods. Okay, I have only these methods. Okay, before test case, after test case for now. Okay, so let's save this. Hopefully, yeah, we have everything. Now let's go back to test case. Now I want to delete, see, earlier we executed test case with all these steps, right? I want to delete open browser, navigate to URL, maximize window. These three steps now, because I already created a test listener method. Delete, delete this step and delete this step. And also close browser I want to delete because I already created after method, after test case method. Delete it and save it. Now let's run this test case and see whether it's going to run or not, because we already created test listener in this project. So let's run and make sure new session. Our test case works. Let me show you now. See, it is actually calling test open browser. From where it is calling open browser? It is actually calling from your, see, it's maximized the window. It's calling from test listener. And then it is performing sign up activity. Country, address, email, right, phone number, and save. Done. So let's if you observe this, the log here, right? If you observe the log, see, before sample, before test case, sample after test case. These are actually coming from test listener, right? These are the test listeners. In the same way, sample after, right? So these steps are coming from, these are the methods, correct? So this is the one method and this is another method, right? So that means our test listener is working correctly, right? So let me create another test case, duplicate of this test case, okay? Copy this test case and paste this test case, okay? And now here what I want to do is I want to modify the values that I am entering, okay? Let's modify the username as Chandu Reddy instead of Ravikant, okay? And then let's change your street address also. Okay, and then let's change the email ID as well. Done. Okay, so now let's save this. Okay, so basically these two test cases does not have opening browser and closing browser and navigating all these steps. It has just the main entering the details and registering, correct? So now I want to create a test suite to run these two test cases at a time. I want to make sure that when I am running a test suite, the test listener is calling before method and after test case method is getting called for both the test cases. Before executing this test case, I want to open and navigate browser by using test listener method. In the same way, before I run this test case also, it should it should call the test listener, right? I want to prove that. Okay, let's create a new test suite. Okay, let's create a new test suite called test listener. Okay, click OK, and then add your test cases. Add what test cases just now we added? Test listener and test listener copy. Click OK. Now let's save the test suite. Now I want to run this test suite and make sure that test listener is called for every test case. Okay, let's run this. Okay, first it should call a test listener before the first test case is executed. Okay, let's see here what happens. My before test case method should be called. Opening browser, see, opening browser, it's happening. That means before test case method called. Okay, and then now register Ravika, first user. Okay, so it's going to select your country and it's entering the street, email, and save. Done. Now it should call the second test case. If you see, before it execute second test case, it is calling, see Chandu Reddy, right? It is calling your test listener again, right? So that means the prerequisite of your test case and post method of your test cases can be defined in test listeners. Okay, let me analyze this logger. See, whenever first test case is this, your second test case is this, right? In the first test case, it called test listener before test case, test listener after test case. For the second test case also, it's called before test case, test listener, after test case, test listener. Okay. Hope you all understand very important concept of test listeners. Okay. In the same way, you can use all other methods also. After test suite, before test suite also. Okay. So if you have any queries, please provide your comments in the comment box. I'll try to respond to your queries. Please do subscribe to the channel, click on bell icon. You'll receive notifications whenever I publish more videos. Thank you.